Hello everyone and welcome, this is Common Cam. Today I'm going to be talking about the Transformers games and basically how, well, we're never going to get a good Transformers game for a very long time. Now I've been thinking about this a lot and I've always kind of wanted to do a topic around this video because lately with the release of Transformers Battlegrounds I feel like there's a lot to think about when it comes to Transformers games and the decline of Transformers games over the years. And it's a real shame because when the Transformers games really started to pick up their pace, of course with War for Cybertron back in 2010, it seemed like a very bright future for the Transformers games. War for Cybertron was this kind of groundbreaking a small masterpiece from High Moon Studios, a studio that hasn't produced a real game before, and with War for Cybertron, with actual real fans behind it, it seemed like the future of the games we're finally going to start getting some green light, because we've had Transformers games in the past. If you saw lately on my Evolution video, we were going through them with the 90s, with the Beast Wars, PlayStation 1 games, and then the PlayStation 2, the famous Transformers Armada game, which was something I grew up with and enjoyed, but of course that wasn't the go-to Transformers game. It was a step in the right direction, but it wasn't something that was kind of like groundbreaking at the time. But then we got the Transformers the game, which was kind of like, ooh, okay, a bit more of an open space with more strategy with the levels. Okay, the graphics aren't amazing, but it's still a step, but it's not quite something that we want. And then War for Cybertron kicks around and it gives us actually something we really want, is the Transformers being the Transformers, being able to transform at will and actually going on their own planet of Cybertron, something that we've desperately wanted from the cartoons prior, something that we wanted to know more about. And the confusing continuity of the War for Cybertron initially being as a prequel to the Generation 1 cartoon, but then it switched to the Aligned continuity. We won't get into all the story details about it, but with War for Cybertron it had a good constructive story and it had a simple narrative. You could pick Autobots or Decepticons in any order. Of course the original order is Decepticons then Autobots, but it had a good constructed story, but you could just jump into either campaign, and it was breadcrumbs to what would become the masterpiece in my opinion as Fall of Cybertron. And I love the design and feel and the aesthetics of War for Cybertron, and I feel like it downgraded a little bit in aesthetics when it came to Fall of Cybertron. But nonetheless, Fall of Cybertron succeeded the most, I think, in its multiplayer. Groundbreaking multiplayer, kind of revolutionized from War for Cybertron. I do prefer the story a lot more in War for Cybertron than I do Fall, because Fall of Cybertron's story is a giant cliffhanger and perhaps one of the biggest sins of gaming, that we never actually got to see how that folded out. Of course Hasbro are going to say to you, oh, then the Transformers Prime cartoon happened, but that was never something that High Moon really wanted. They wanted to tell their own story, and the trilogy should have been on Earth and it should have had its own conclusion to that saga. But where Fall of Cybertron did succeed the most was its multiplayer, and I can remember the highlight days of multiplayer with my friends, playing on it repeatedly on the PlayStation 3, day after day. And then that was it. After the big bang at the end of the Fall of Cybertron, where the Nemesis and the Ark collides, it was it, and not what we expected at the time, but sooner down the line we'd realise that that actually is kind of a good symbolism for the games officially being over in terms of quality. High Moon Studios did Dark of the Moon game, which was a fairly decent tie-in game, perhaps one of the best examples of a movie tie-in game in my opinion, and that was fairly fine, but that was before Fall of Cybertron. So we got War for Cybertron, Dark of the Moon, and then Fall of Cybertron. But then what happened next was shit, like absolute shit. Like I'm not going to sugarcoat it any more than that. Rise of the Darkspark was a bad example of how to do a movie tie-in game, and something that Hasbro did not know what to do at all. And I can't even remember the studio that did that game, but they were basically borrowing assets from High Moon Studios because they were doing Deadpool, and which unfortunately that game, while being good, did kind of downgrade High Moon Studios. They have been rarely seen since. They kind of help on other projects. They don't actually make their own games anymore, which is a shame. But with the success of Fall of Cybertron, with the amount of good sales that it did, with both games actually never all three of the games, doing really well, Hasbro just didn't want the train to stop, and they wanted a game consecutively like every 1 to 2 years. and obviously we got Age of Extinction, the movie, and they had to tie it somehow with that movie. Even though that movie did very well and made $1 billion, on the other side the game flopped massively, and it did not help the confidence of future Transformers games, because they basically splitted the entire game from the movies to the continuity that Hyman Studios had formed, and they tried to make them clash, but the story didn't really make sense on why they clashed. There wasn't really any example of why these should have clashed. It was just kind of like, alright, so people like the games, but we kind of need to include the movie because it's part of the film, and that really did not last long, that game. The multiplayer especially, it wasn't long until a few years later that the servers obviously went down. It was only recent that all of the servers have been cut, so you can't play any of the Transformers games on multiplayer again. The only good games to play multiplayer was, of course, Fall of Cybertron and War for Cybertron, and that was about it. Yes, sure, the player base wasn't as high as it was, but there was still a small group of community of fans who would get together, arrange events to play the multiplayer. But that's just unfortunately the state of the industry, and with Activision selling off their rights to the Transformers, no longer making any other games, their last game was Transformers Devastation, and that was 5 years ago now, and while that game was an okay game, it wasn't really revolutionary either. It was just kind of like a standalone G1 episode, which was fine, and it definitely has its audience. Platinum Games definitely do have their audience, even though Platinum Games have definitely declined over the years when we took on several tie-in products like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and then with the Transformers game. But the Transformers game is actually a very good example and a good paid homage to the G1 cartoon, which was really nice. But when it came to kind of accessibility with multiplayer, there was none. With the story, it was repetitive, especially for the trophy list, which was god awful. It just didn't make me want to actually platinum the game. There felt no real need to play this game over and over again, because I didn't feel like there was anything good. The loot system, like the kind of weapon system that they had, it was boring, and overall it just wasn't something I wanted to go back to, especially 5 times. I didn't want to go back 5 times and play as all the characters, which was lacking anyway. You know, we only got 5 characters, technically 6 if you count Red Alert, or actually no, 7 if you count Goldbug, which was the 2 skins that they had. But still, nonetheless, Devastation was just kind of like, it exists. It was decent for the first time around, but I'd never ever go back to it again, unless if I ever do it for commentary purposes, just as for fun, for you guys, the audience. But personally, I'd never ever go back to the game. But with War for Cybertron, For Cybertron, I would always go back to it occasionally and play the multiplayer, because that's where the most fun was, and it really is with the multiplayer. We live in a world where we do have to rely on service, and if the audience base goes down rapidly, it will obviously be shut down, and they tried to save it. You know, they tried to do the PS4 remaster of Fall of Cybertron to kind of bring that juice back, to see if anyone was still around, and unfortunately that did not do well either. And unfortunately, the only way you can play the game now is that if you brought it at the time. So I have that downloaded, thankfully, but for a lot of people, they're going to miss out on that, and they're going to have to buy the PS3 version. But what my main topic is with this video, to kind of round it off, to shortly simple it, is that the games have very much declined to the point where we've got games like Transformers Battlegrounds existing, and that has no right to be on a console at all. You know, I reviewed Transformers Battlegrounds, you can watch it, and I gave it a fair review. You know, it was something that was like, alright, they were doing a different take, and I don't think the studio did a horrendous job at all. In fact, it's just a fine game. It doesn't do anything though, however, to make me want to go back to it ever again. As soon as I finished the game, I deleted it off my console, because I'm never going to play this again. I reviewed it, I did a few playthroughs of it for the audience to show them what it was like, and obviously the criticisms have been very well received with this game. I don't think it's all just, however. I don't think it's like horrendous or the worst thing to ever exist. I mean, do you remember Rise of the Darkspark? But with Transformers Battlegrounds, it was just something that was very lacking in creativity, and was something that Hasbro just wanted to do because it has been so long since it's been a Transformers game. And that's really the point of the video. It's because it's been that long, and I don't think we're going to be getting a Transformers game for a long time now, and I think Hasbro are not going to put in the money to give us a Transformers game like that ever again. Never say never, because there could always be some sort of investment in the future, But if their investments are going to go to shitty Transformers Netflix series, I don't have high hopes that they're going to be doing it for the same for the games, sadly. And it's just really sad, really, because the Transformers games had such potential. They started out so great, and they could have expanded open world. They could have gone further. You know, they could have really made something of it. But money is the end game. That will always sabotage the greatest of things. Money will always come at the expense of, potential. It's like, it's too much money, too risky of an investment. And in my opinion, the amount of confidence that Hasbro lacks, it was the downfall of these games. They just thought they could get away with milking the franchise every 2 years of a game with little polish on it, and thinking that we, the consumers, would be idiots and buy it. And unfortunately, no. A lot of people saw through the decline and was just kind of like, when are you going to do something better? And they just didn't. With Transformers Battlegrounds, it's a fair example. No one talked about this game. Not a single person spoke about this game. They kind of had to rely on YouTubers such as me to talk about this game, because no other media outlets would talk about it massively. And it's a shame for the company, because I felt like they weren't really given a lot to work with. They were just given something to just make something quick and short. And it was developed within at least over a year, and I've been told that this game was not given the best of its ability, and it's a shame. But still, nonetheless, I feel like Hasbro just really needs to take a step back and think about the future of this industry, because there is a real craving for a Transformers game again. And I know there's talk about CERN Infinity making a game or something, but I read also that kind of got panned, and it's not in the best of situations right now. So, if they're struggling, it's probably got to do something with budget, because we all know what happened with the Transformers Universe MMO. That kind of had a life, but then Hasbro pulled the plug on it halfway through when they were just starting to get good. So there's going to be a lot of situations where I think the Transformers games that are going to go expansive or want to go expansive are going to be cut off short, because it's either just going to be too budgetary, and Hasbro are just not going to risk it financially. Whatever, right? Because they're making movies. That's really their main center. That's what they're really struggling at, is trying to get the movies back on track financially. But with the games, it's a shame. And that's kind of what this video is just about. It's just pointing out that it's just a shame that the Transformers games have not gone anywhere beyond what we potentially hoped for in Fall of Cybertron. Because Fall of Cybertron was a really good sequel, and it deserved its ending, and it was denied that because of continuity issues, because of continuity blabber. Something that High Moon just didn't get the chance to finish its story. And we'll never get that story. We'll never ever get that story again, because half of the people that worked on those games from High Moon Studios have left now, doing other things. So that's a shame. Hasbro really missed the ball on this, and it's a shame that it's going to be about 5 or 10 years, potentially, till we see a game again. I mean, they've got small games going off on the apps, Earth Wars and stuff like that, which I'm sure a lot of people are liking. And I'm good. It's good that they are. It's not a game for me, however. I mean, they've come out recently with that Transformers VR game, which is cool, okay. I don't care. A lot of people don't care. Only a few people are going to ever play that when they actually go to events such as that and play it. And VR game looks really trashy. It looks horrible. It looks disgusting. Jesus Christ. So, in fact, that's the example. That's what we're going into. A game like that. It's like, really? Is that the future of the Transformers games? We go from Battlegrounds to that? God, I thought it couldn't get any worse. And apparently it has. So I hope Hasbro pick up the pieces and actually get some good brains over there to develop a game, to develop a good game, to actually bring it back, because a lot of people are missing the Kraven, and I think there's potential for a new audience as well. Gaming is the best way to get people into a new franchise. People who don't watch, there's not a lot of people who watch Transformers cartoons, regular people, in terms of regulars as non-fans, people who just play video games. But a Transformers game might be what gets them involved. And I know there's a lot of fans of Transformers because of the High Moon games. And it's a shame that those fans have not been given more of that. Anyway, guys, this has been Comedy Cam. This has just been kind of like an idea of a video that I've just thought of. I just thought I'd ramble on and just want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. So yeah, do you think we'll be getting a Transformers game in the future anytime soon? Or do you think that this franchise within gaming is pretty much buried now? This has been Comedy Cam, and until the next video, goodbye.